My tip today is one used by the most confident of speakers. It is a skill that the truly confident and authoritative speakers use when they show they are in control of their messaging. It's easy, it's doable, and I'll explain it to you all. All eyes on me. Hi, I'm Jane. Today I'm talking about being concise. Concise is that art when we're talking, and it truly is an art, where we can convey our thoughts eloquently and effectively, but in as few words as possible. We're able to manage our message, to control our message, so we don't need all the baggage and all the other words that go around what we're saying to back it up. We can stick to the facts and convey it effectively. This works particularly well in business settings, but it also works in social settings if you have a tendency to, let's just say, ramble on a bit. And I put myself in that category. Speaking concisely works for you. It shows that you're in command of your messaging, in control of your situation. Now, how are we going to do this? How are we going to decide, with all the thoughts running through our minds, what are the exact things that we want to give back in our response or add to the discussion? How are we going to sift through all these hundreds of thoughts banging around inside our skulls? Well, we need a technique, and this is it. When you've finished listening to the person speaking to you, and I really do emphasize that you pay attention till the speaker has finished saying what they're saying, whether they're asking a question or not. Give that other person the grace of listening to them right until the end of them finish speaking. Then take that beat, own that pause, as I say, and just take that 2 seconds to organize your thoughts. So now comes down to crunch time. You have to decide what is worthy of sharing with these people. The best way to do it is put your thoughts through a little test and say to yourself, if I can only share one thing with this group, of all the things I want to say, what is that one key element? And the moment you picked out the one key element, the thing that is the most important that you really want to share, that's your first point. That's your first point. Then you get a little bit of leeway if the discussion is not as simple and straightforward as question and answer. You need to, add a few more points in. Then what you will do, you can pick the second most important point and the third most important point. These are your stepping stones. And the reason I call them stepping stones is I want you to imagine you're coming up to a river. And you need to get from one side of the river to the other in the most efficient manner possible. You want to keep your feet dry, you want to get through it and be at the other side. So in this river are stepping stones. If you go stepping stone, stepping stone, stepping stone, you'll reach the other side, the shortest path possible, and you'll step off safe and sound. But if you have an urge, if you have a feeling you want to digress, or ramble, and you step off the stepping stone, you're going to then get caught up in the river, which is you getting caught up in a ramble or a side discussion and not sticking to your key point. That's not speaking concisely. Concisely is sticking with your key points. So in your mind, before you respond, and I know this sounds like a lot to do, but your brain is very, very able to do this. In your brief pause, pick out the 1, 2, or 3 key elements that you want to share with your listeners, your bullet points, in other words. When you start speaking, remember, all eyes will come onto you. It's just the nature of the beast. It's how things work. If we're in a discussion and someone speaks and someone's about to respond, we see from their body language, they're about to respond, we turn our eyes towards them. And in that moment when all eyes are on you, that is your little golden window. That is your perfect moment to share your key information, because that's when the attention on you is the closest. That's your little honeymoon phase. So you don't want to waste it. You don't want to squander it with a long introduction to your response or a whole preamble. You want to get in there, share your information, and get out the other side as clean and eloquent as possible. So you go into point 1. Now you can elaborate on it. You go to point 2, you can elaborate, point 3, and elaborate. Now don't worry, in that pause when you're picking your 1, 2 or 3 key points, don't worry too much about your actual sentence structure around it. Your key points are what you're focused on. The rest is just scaffolding, and trust yourself. Your brain will fill in the information, the sentence structure, the phraseology that you need to convey those 3 points. But you have to keep those 3 points front and center of your mind. And anytime you find yourself stepping away from one of those key points, wherever you are in the list, mentally and pull yourself back and get back to your point and keep going. If we do it this way, we're far less likely to, as I said, have long winding introductions or go off pathways of explanation. We will stick to what we want to say, we'll share that pertinent information, and then we'll stop speaking. And that's where the power is. That's where the magic happens, because that's what shows your ultimate control. You are a master of your communications. You don't need all this filler to go behind you. As I said, it works particularly well in meetings when we all know a lot of people have a lot to say. Don't fall into that trap. Stay focused on what you want to say. It really does work well. Another little golden benefit from this tip is that if you are in a very fast-flowing discussion where a lot of people are jumping in and sharing ideas, it will work in your favor if you get your key element out there first, front and center. Because should you be interrupted or spoken over, at least you staked your claim. You've got your first point out there, and everybody knows you were the one that made that point. Now, we hope that people do not interrupt or jump in, but we do need to be aware of it, that we can at least say to ourselves, well, I got that out there. So remember, in the pause, you take your time to figure out 1, 2 or 3 points, and naturally that will depend on the complexity of the discussion. If it's a simple back and forth, 1 point will suffice. But should you be getting into a more nuanced or technical or complex discussion, you might need 2 or 3 points. I wouldn't go much past 3 points, because I think once you get into 4, 5, 6 points, you're probably not going to remember them, which leaves you open to digressing. Or I think it works better if you share those 3 points, let the other person respond, and you come back and you have a more measured discussion and conversation. I really would like people to try this. It is a technique worth learning. We can all benefit from it. The one small piece of homework I can give you that will help you build toward this technique is simply to answer questions and time yourself while you're doing them. It's really easy. In the drop down below the video, you'll see that I've provided a few very simple, very straightforward, everyday questions. What you're going to do is take the list, look at the questions, set your timer on your phone once you start speaking, and answer the question. Answer the question using the technique we just described, picking 1 or 2 key points, leading with those, elaborating, and moving to the next one. And then when you finish speaking, stop your timer and see how much time that took. Now, why are we doing this? Because we're trying to build up association in our mind of how long we speak for and how it feels. Because I guarantee a lot of the time you think you've only spoken for 1 or 2 minutes. Quite often it's longer, and that is a skill we can work on. We can work on being more concise and brief purely in time-wise. So start to build up an association where you say, okay, so that's what 1 minute felt like. Then try another question, check the timer. Oh, wow, that's what 5 minutes felt like. Once you build up that muscle memory, that connection between the two, you will get a very quick feeling when you're in discussions with people if you're dominating, if you're talking too long, if you're rambling or digressing. It's a great skill to do, and the questions are fun to answer because it makes us practice the technique of our 1, 2, 3 points. Please, if you want to keep layering on the skills and learning more, jump to my next video and we'll build it all in there. And please, if you can subscribe and like, but most importantly, leave your comments. Anything you want to discuss or you're struggling with in the field of your communications, in the field of your public speaking, drop it in there and I'll get to it. I'll see you next week because, as we all know, the time to speak up is now.